Hey guys, Yulia Bone over here. We continue to study our chapter 4 and we are talking in this video about what is the difference between quantity demanded and demand, and what is the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. So we're talking about the difference between quantity demanded versus demand, and then what is the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. So guys, if I refer to quantity demanded, I refer to specific point on the graph. This specific point corresponds to a certain quantity and certain price on my graph. So this is going to be quantity demanded. If I take a different point on my graph, so if I refer to quantity demanded, it's going to be one point. Let's suppose point B. Once again, this is a specific quantity at specific price. So what we need to remember about quantity demanded is 1 point on the graph. 1 point on the graph. And if I refer to demand curve, I refer to every single point on this graph. So therefore, I'm talking about the entire demand line. So the difference between quantity demanded is one particular point on the graph that corresponds to a specific quantity at specific price. And if I'm talking about demand curve, then demand curve, I refer to every point on my graph. Therefore, I refer to the entire demand line. So it's not that complicated. And you will think about, well, why are you telling that to us? This is so simple. It's very important to understand these differences because we'll talk about this, in a second, how does quantity demanded and demand going to play a role in determining all the laws about the demand curve. So therefore, on this PowerPoint slide, you probably want to stop this video and record it, guys. It's not really explained in the book or in the PowerPoints very well. So the difference between quantity demanded versus demand. Specific quantity at specific price, 1 point on the demand curve, and demand curve is going to be range of quantities at different prices. So therefore, we refer to all points on the demand curve. And next, what we're going to do, we're going to talk about the change in quantity. So moving on to the difference between change in quantity demanded and change in demand. Guys, remember, when we refer to quantity demanded, we refer to one particular point on the graph. So therefore, if we want to change quantity demanded, we just need to move from one price quantity pair on our graph to a new price quantity pair on our graph. So what we did over here, we stayed on the same demand curve, we just moved along the demand curve. So change in quantity demanded, change from one price quantity pair to a new price quantity pair. It's moving along the demand curve and we're staying on the same line. We're staying on the same demand curve. And guys, the reason for this movement along the demand curve is going to be because the price of the product is changing. So when the price of the product is going to change, then our quantity demanded is going to change. So let's suppose we were initially, let me get this same color. Initially, we were at point A. The price of the product was $4. Quantity demanded was equal to 8. Let's suppose that the price of the product has increased. So it went from $4 to $6. What are we going to do? We are moving over here along the demand curve, and we moved and changed from old price quantity pair to a new price quantity pair. So when the price of the product has increased, quantity demanded has decreased. Remember, everything corresponds here with the law of the demand. So remember, the law of demand says when the price of the product is increasing, quantity demanded is decreasing. Exactly what the law of demand says and exactly what we see on the graph. So what we did, we moved along the demand curve and we changed our quantity demanded. So now, if we want to change our demand curve, remember, when I'm talking about demand, I refer to every single point on my graph, so therefore I refer to the entire demand curve. My question is, what do you think? If I want to change demand curve, what I need to do? I'll give you 3 seconds to think about it. To change the demand curve, I need to shift my curve. I need to shift my curve up and to the right, or I need to shift my curve down and to the left. This is going to be change in demand. Guys, the reason for this change in demand is going to be 5 shifters or 5 determinants that we are talking about in the next video, determinants. So these determinants are kind of like 5 different economic events that can happen on the market that are going to shift our entire line. So change in quantity demanded is going to be caused by the change in price, but change in demand is going to be caused by the change in 5 economic events or 5 determinants. Please, guys, know the difference between this quantity demanded and demand. It's very important. There are questions that particularly, refer to these kind of, differences. And on this PowerPoint, you can pause it, write it down, and highlight it and memorize it. So pretty much this is what it says. The change in quantity demanded, we change from one price quantity pair to a new price quantity pair. We stayed on the same demand curve. We moved along the demand curve, and the movement was caused by the change in price. So the change in demand curve, it says over here, goods quantity demanded changes even though price stays the same. I will explain this one in the next video. What does it mean? So we shift in the demand curve. If we want to change the demand curve, once again, we need to shift the demand curve. Entire relationships between price and quantity are going to change. And what is the reason for the shift? It's going to be 5 determinants. So we're going to move to the next video.